When the Federal Reserve was given full control over inflation was 1971. So we can go back that far, and some of your viewers may have been around like I was at that time. And at that point, the average income for the average family was $9,500. And a family of four could live comfortably. I'm not saying extravagantly,
Right.
but you only needed one wage earner to support a family of four. I think today the average wage is what, 56,000 or something like that.
I think that's the medium.
It's somewhere in that vicinity, which sounds great because, hey, wouldn't you rather have 56,000 than 9,400? Absolutely. But how's a family of four doing on 56,000? Chances are pretty good you need two wage earners, and even if they're both getting the average wage, unfortunately, even at 100,000, they're still typically living paycheck to paycheck.
Now,
So,
is this what you would call inflation?
It is exactly what I would call inflation.
Okay,
which,
I mean, I just want people to be educated here.
Yes, okay. Well, all right, then let me take you back a little bit because it really matters. You know, what is the function of money? Money will have a number of functions, but if you have a designated money, it enables an economy to specialize. So you have a banker and you have a baker and you have a lawyer and you have a real estate agent, whatever, but they specialize. Otherwise, you'd have to do everything yourself, to grow your own food and take care of the sheep so you could make your own clothes, etc. So over thousands of years, they tried lots of different things to see what could be used as money. But the only thing that actually meets the prerequisites to be good money is gold. And gold is a labor-based money. And it's also indestructible. And that's one of the key features. It also can be divided. I mean, you can have an ounce, you can have a tenth of an ounce without a loss. Like you can't do it with a diamond or a stone because when you make it smaller, it loses value. Right. But that's not true with gold. So for governments, though, that want to tax you and spend, well, if they tax you on a gold standard, you know about it and you might not like it and you might have pushback. So they came up with a fiat money standard. The definition of fiat is by decree, but the bottom line is it is legalized money. So in a fiat system, inflation is part of the design, because for governments, it enables them to tax you without having to go through legislation and make it visible. But as we all know that have lived through inflation, and we all have since the day you were born, if it costs you more and more to buy the same goods and services, is it because those goods and services have become that much more valuable? Or because the money you're using to buy them has become that much less?
Yeah.
So the advantage for, I mean, it's genius, but the advantage for governments is they get to tax you without going through legislation.
Like a hidden form of taxation.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And if they can keep it at 2% a year, well, you're still losing 2% of your purchasing power value over a year, but it's small enough that you probably don't notice it. And that's how we've lost all of that value over this period of time. For corporations, this is what has enabled income inequality, because the average wage by design is never going to keep up with inflation. And what do we use to gauge inflation? Aside from the Federal Reserve changing things to make it look however they want it to look, but it's the goods that are produced by these corporations. So they use, and so for corporations, it enables you actually agree to earn less and less over time, and the corporate profits go up and up and up, and there you go. There's your income inequality. I think I just saw a piece recently in the 1970s, actually, the difference between the CEO and the average worker was 20 times earnings. Now the average is 300 times earnings, and many are making like 5,000 times what the average worker earns. Now, I'm not saying that the guys running the corporation aren't entitled and don't earn that much more money, but it's that inflation piece that enables it. Because what that creates is called nominal confusion. We marry those numbers. Woohoo! I'd rather get 56,000 than 9,500 or whatever, except that it doesn't buy you as much. However, had you been paid in gold ounces, and remember, 1970, that would have been $35 an ounce.
Mm-hmm.
So if you divide the average wage by the cost of an ounce of gold then in reality, and you did not get a raise, not one penny, but you were still paid in the same amount of ounces, that'd be somewhere in the vicinity of 240, 280,000. You guys can do the math. And that would maintain your standard of living. So if you or I go into a bank and borrow, say for a house or a credit card or any kind of debt, then the bank can create that new money into the system. Well, what are interest rates? Interest rates are the key tool that, excuse me, that central banks use to get you to either stimulate the economy or to slow it down and create faster or slower inflation. Because in theory, at any rate, if interest rates are lower, then people go out and they borrow more, and therefore they spend more, and therefore that stimulates the economy. On the other side, if inflation is running hot or high, and you and I would notice it, they want to slow that down. And that's actually the genius piece that these central bankers came up with, was controlling the rate and speed of inflation.
Right.
So if they want to slow it down, they raise interest rates, then fewer entities borrow and spend, and then that slows it down. The problem is when you enter a crisis in this country, the average amount that central bank, the Federal Reserve, drops interest rate is something like 5.5 or 5 3/4. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what happened. That's pretty much where we were in 2008 when the crisis hit, and they dropped it, bam, down to 0.
Right.
Well, what do interest rates, what are they really supposed to tell you? Number one, they're supposed to tell you about the value of the currency into the future.